everyone, and welcome back to Our Eyes on Indie. My name is Finn, and it is my absolute pleasure to bring you our review of My Friendly Neighborhood, the Sesame Street meets Resident Evil game that we all knew we wanted, we all knew we needed, and after years of development and having a demo out last year, the game is finally released. I've played through it a couple of times now, found a lot of secrets, all the good stuff, and now it is time to give you our full in-depth review of the game. Developed by John and Evan Szymanski and published by Dread XP, is the Friendly Neighborhood worth exploring, or perhaps even moving into, or is this a survival horror you should skip in favor of something better? That's the question we have before us, so let's get into it. In My Friendly Neighborhood, you play as Gordon O'Brien, an electrician who has been sent to the old My Friendly Neighborhood studio to, well, take them off the air permanent. See, the show is broadcasting over every single network over top of the news and every other program currently on air. And while the show has already been canceled for some time, it's a mystery as to why things have started up again. Now, of course, when you arrive, things don't go nearly as expected. After getting inside the building, finding the elevator all gunked up, and meeting with Ricky the Sock, Gordon finds himself on a sort of trip through the madness of puppetry as you go through the studio trying to find a way to get to the top of the building and detach the antenna. So let's go ahead and talk about how things look though, because oh my goodness, when you start the game, that opening cityscape looks a bit rough. I am not going to lie. It is pretty rough. It's pretty dead quiet. It looks a little bit, not even a little bit. It looks pretty low texture. I'll be honest with you here. It is just one of those where you look at it and you go, well, it's okay, I guess the development went elsewhere. And that's very true. All the puppet designs are fantastic, and the puppets look great. Whether it's just simple basic Norman coming at you with the felt texture all over his body, looks really good. Or some of the special puppets that you run into in each area. Whether it's a giant stomping bird that's coming to eat your face off, or just a generic guy that wants to fix things even though he's not very good at it. They're all really great to look at. All the designs are really cool. They really harken you back to the days of Sesame Street as a child watching that show and going, hey, you know what? These puppets are kind of cool. So now going, man, these puppets are kind of cool, but in a very dangerous sense of the word. I also got to bring very, very big props to the weapon design in this game. I love the weapons in this game. I think the fact that they shoot metallic letters at enemies is wonderful. And watching it when you just fire a grenade at enemies and letters go everywhere, it is wonderful to look at. And while the letters themselves don't have a lot of texture work to them, because they're metal, it works. It's great. It's awesome. I love it. So graphically, not going to blow anyone's socks off. It's not going to win any awards for visuals, but it's solid enough and it works. I gotta say that the sound design in this game and the voice work, oh my gosh, the voice work is just top tier. It is so wonderful. No matter how many times I hear Norman or any of the other puppets talk about how to count by swallowing your hands, I still thoroughly enjoyed it every single time because the delivery is just so good. And like I said, you are going to hear the same lines repeated over and over and over and over again as you go through the games, as while each puppet has a slight variation to some of the lines, they all tend to have the same lines. Like I said, all of them talk about counting by putting your hands in front of your face, knowing that's two hands, putting one in your mouth, swallowing as hard as you can, and now you have one hand in your stomach and one outside. So again, you're going to hear those lines multiple times because of how good the delivery is. I never got sick of it. Plus, it also adds to the atmosphere of these puppets are slowly but surely going more and more insane as they have been left to their own devices. It adds a lot to the atmosphere there. Plus, sound design's good, always able to tell where the puppet is in relation to where I am. And while there isn't a whole lot of ambient sound, I didn't mind it too much. It makes sense you're in a studio. There's not going to be a whole lot going on there for ambient sounds. My one gripe with it is like in the sewer and the cave areas. I wish there was maybe just a little bit more. And also the music. The music is something where, I'll be honest, I kind of forgot there was music in the game for the most part. Like, it just really wasn't there. It was not in my face at all. There was never any moment where the music really rose to the occasion. There was a slight bit towards the end, but unfortunately, that was really it. I couldn't even tell you what the music sounded like throughout this whole game because it just wasn't really there, wasn't present. Also, huge props to the people that voiced Gordon and Ricky. Fantastic. Ricky being the only NPC you really talk to throughout the game, he is wonderful. Even the big puppets that do have some voice work are fantastic as well. And Gordon, even though he doesn't have a whole lot to say throughout the entirety of the game, all his line delivery felt perfect for the setting. Whether it was just yelling at the puppets when they grab him, yelling for them to get off, or that their breath stunk, it was great, and I enjoyed every single moment of the voice acting, which I'm going to use to segue into the gameplay, and I want to start off by saying, up until one very last section of the game, at the very, very end of the game, this game is not scary. So keep that in mind if you're going in expecting something really scary, and I don't think that's what they were really going for here. While it is survival horror, and it has the aspects of a survival horror game, and those aspects are great, it is not scary at all. This game is more funny and kind of self-aware, and I think that they leaned into that has given them a lot of just good graces for me, at the very least. It makes the game very enjoyable when you look at it and go, oh, they're puppets and they're hilarious in what they're saying. Yeah, it's obvious they're going into madness, and that's kind of creepy in a sense, but the game is never scary. There was no real jump scare moment. There was no point where I was going around a corner and going, oh gosh, is there going to be a puppet here? Well, first and foremost, I would always hear them first, but it doesn't lend it to the same atmosphere and same terror that, say, the Resident Evil 2 remake gives me when I played that. When I played Resident Evil 2 remake, I was always concerned about every body I would come across, because that body could get up and areas I could go back to potentially have new enemies. And while I will say, My Friendly Neighborhood does have sections where you will go back through old areas you've been to before, and the enemies get changed, their layout's a bit different, or new puppets show up. While it has that, they're not scary. They're also not too incredibly dangerous. It's pretty easy to dispatch the puppets, whether by using your weapons, your guns specifically, or by using the wrench that you get. You can take them out in a few hits if you're careful. I never actually died during my time in My Friendly Neighborhood, so keep that in mind. And that's even going through on harder difficulties. I never got to a point where I was like, oh gosh, I'm like super low on health. What am I going to do? I don't know if that was good resource management or just the fact that the game is not that difficult, but to me, it definitely felt like the latter of the two. Now, speaking of the gameplay and stuff, survival horror, scavenging for resources, never knowing what's around the next corner, and of course, solving obligatory puzzles. I gotta say, I really enjoyed the puzzles in My Friendly Neighborhood a lot, especially the puzzle to get the secret weapon, which I will not spoil here, was fantastic. It's a big multi-layer puzzle taking you all throughout the map to actually be able to unlock it, and it is very cool, I must say. It's a lot of fun, and all the other puzzles are great too. There's one where you have to board game. It's not really a puzzle, but it's just like a little thing that's a lot of fun. There's one involving some masks, a couple of other things, and that's great. And speaking of puzzles that are great in this game, I want to talk about something that I don't know if a lot of people know about, but consider this a brief spoiler here, so go ahead and skip ahead a couple moments here. You can help out some of the puppets, the big bads that are in each area. You are able to help each of them out, and then they no longer attack you. And I thought that was awesome. I loved it a lot, and it leans into the theme of this game, which is being a friendly neighbor. I know, crazy, right? This game that's a survival horror about crazy puppets is actually about being a good neighbor to the puppet. And that brings me to just fighting the puppets in general. Like I said, it feels pretty good and pretty easy, but puppets, of course, cannot actually die, so they always get back up as soon as you leave that area and you come back. They're back up where they were before, or in a slightly different location. So that's where the real ammunition management comes in, is, okay, I gotta go back through this room again, so now I gotta spend more letters to actually dispatch these puppets unless I can get around them. And a lot of the areas are pretty tight, and it can be hard to kite the puppets. Now, your one thing to combat this is duct tape. Puppets, like I said, they don't die, but you can, however, restrain them with duct tape. So if I ever had a really big area that I was like, this seems like somewhere I'm gonna walk through multiple times, I would take out all the puppets, and if I had enough duct tape, I would duct tape as many puppets as I could in that area, so that way I could walk back through safely. So definitely, that's the best resource management part of this game, is managing your duct tape and going, okay, where am I going to probably have to go through multiple times while I'm in this area? And therefore, where should I spend my duct tape, and what puppets can I actually just avoid generally and not have to worry about? That was my favorite part for the resource management and the survival horror aspect of the game. Also, keep in mind, you do have to spend tokens to save your game. So if you are the kind of person that is like, oh gosh, I just can't do this, too much stress, keep that in mind, because you are going to have to make sure you have enough tokens to save. I had plenty through my playthroughs here. The first one, I was saving a lot because I didn't know what was going to be a corner, and I wasn't sure how hard the game was going to be overall. And as I got further on and played again through, I was like, okay, I saved less and less as I went on because I knew what to expect and what was coming. But with all that said, I do want to talk about the length of the game here. It took me less than 4 hours to beat the game on my first playthrough, playing on normal difficulty. So this is not a long game, and again, that's going through without knowing anything about the game at all. Just going through, figuring out the puzzles at my own pace, doing some extra exploring as well. So less than 4 hours to beat the game. So keep that in mind when you are playing this game. It is not super long, so if you're looking for a super long experience, this is not it. And I don't think that's a bad thing, though. Survival horror lends itself to being replayed time and time again on higher difficulties with different modifiers, which I gotta say, the secret tapes you can find in the modifiers form are pretty cool. Whether it's tripling the amount of enemies, which is the only one I'm gonna mention here, that one in particular makes the game crazy. It makes it so much harder to navigate around. And if you want a true hard experience, that's the way to do it for sure. But like I said, it takes less than 4 hours to get through this game without even knowing where you're going or what the puzzles are or anything like that. And to be honest, I was satisfied. I was satisfied with completing it in that amount of time. I enjoyed it. It did not overstay its welcome with that. Like I said, I never felt repetition with the puppets' lines. I enjoyed them even later on and found myself kind of quoting them as I went through the game. And especially, I popped in with a few of my friends to let them see from time to time, and they found the lines hilarious, and just being able to go through, it never got repetitive in that sense. So, with all that said, is the ending of the game even satisfying? Well, there are 3 different endings to My Friendly Neighborhood, and I found all of them pretty satisfying in their own ways. They're not going to be for everybody. I will say the story and how it ends is not going to be for everybody, but I actually really liked all 3 endings that are in the game that I found, unless there are some secret ones I don't know about. I found one definitely secret one, and then there are 2 main endings at the end of the game, and having experienced all 3, I gotta say, they're all good. They all lend to the atmosphere the game has been building and the way it presents itself, and they're all fantastic. So, the conclusion for My Friendly Neighborhood. This one is going to depend on who you are as a person. This game is not going to be for everyone. If you're looking for something scary, it's not a scary game. If you're looking for the survival horror aspects of just the combat, resource management, and puzzles, this game is fantastic at that, and I love it so much for it. If you're looking for something funny, this game is kind of for you if you're in the mood to also have to think about where to go and what to do. Now, the big thing I gotta say about it, though, with those 2 things out of the way, is this game is short, and if you are only going to play through it one time, you might have the same enjoyment I did, where I felt satisfied after that amount of time, but you also might not. So keep that in mind. If you're going to only play through this game one time, you might not be as enjoyed or satisfied at the end of it as I was. But if you're the kind of person that enjoys survival horror and going through a game multiple times, harder and harder, and finding every single secret, getting all the secret codes and all that, this game is going to be perfect for you. It is chock full of secret tapes to find with new modifiers on how to play the game, and it is wonderful. So, the conclusion is, if you're going to play through it one time, maybe think about, is this going to be enough enjoyment for me? If you're a survival horror fan, this game is absolutely for you. Though not scary, it is still a wonderful game in the survival horror genre, and I think they knocked it out of the park in that aspect. So, My Friendly Neighborhood is available on Steam for $29.99. Definitely worth that price if you ask me. I got enough enjoyment out of it for that, and to be honest, even more. I would have paid 40 for it even. So, fantastic game. Those are my thoughts on it there at the end with if you should or should not buy it. But that's it for our review. So thank you all so very much for watching. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. If you want to see some straight up gameplay and first impressions of the game, head on over to our second channel, Our Hands on Indie, where you can see me loading into the game for the first time. But until next time, my name is Finn, and we'll be here with our eyes on Indie.